$102 billion. That is how much money in customer deposits First Republic Bank lost in the first quarter this year. The failing bank reported earnings last night with less than ideal numbers. This mass exodus of deposits from the bank was a direct result of customers losing confidence after it was injected with a temporary $30 billion lifeline to keep the lights on. Shah Galani, I'm going to throw this one to you. What's your take on these numbers by First Republic?
Obviously poor. The stock is getting hammered this morning. Not surprisingly, the things that were, I think, more shocking than the numbers were the fact that they were talking about taking, I think the quote was, exploring strategic options. What that means, nobody knows. They did talk about further reducing their balance sheet, which means there's not going to be any expansion as far as their loan book, which means credit conditions are going to be tight for anybody who needs a loan from them, likely not wanting to give any money to anybody because they don't have it. If they continue to see deposit outflows, this bank is going to be in trouble. There were no, I think that I think freaked out analysts the most was there was no Q&A after the call. They tried, some analysts tried to ask some questions. There were no answers. There were no questions taken. That's a problem. I think that speaks poorly to how badly things are. And what the question is, what isn't the bank telling us?
Shah, are you getting your 10-foot pole out for this one, or is there a trading opportunity here? Without that's my Q&A for you.
Look, there's always a trade to the upside because some of these banks can pop. If we get some good news from some other banks, then people say, "Look, this is really cheap down here." Sure, it's cheap, but stuff that's cheap can get a lot cheaper. I wouldn't buy this bank. On a speculative basis, maybe buy some calls on it, call spreads on it. But as far as owning this for a longer term play or an investment, no, I wouldn't. I think the bank has lower to go. Anything can happen. It's likely to get taken over. They're probably trying to line up some partner for the bank now. So, yeah, and then what would the assets be? What would the value of that be for as far as its equity goes? Remains to be seen. But I just don't think it's worth playing. Again, the only way to play, I would prefer to play it from the downside. But I know for a lot of folks who like to buy stuff on the cheap, a cheap call spread, give it a shot. But it's speculative.
Yeah, it's a speculative play for sure. We've seen stocks like this for no reason jump up because you have that buy the dip mentality coming in. Garrett, how do you see the bank shaking out after this little mini fit that we're having here? How is this shaping up for the sector in general?
Well, I think it's going to reshape the entire sector, right? We've got 4,500 banks. That trend of consolidation will likely continue on the backside of this year. We're going to wait a little bit of time. You're probably going to see a couple of forced marriages. This does, of course, benefit the too big to fail banks. You saw all that money pouring out of a company like FRC, moving to these large financial organizations. That trend is clearly in place. You're seeing a lot of money leaving regional deposits, moving to these other larger banks. The challenge really, Vaz, is that are those banks that are in New York, the JP Morgans, the Bank of Americas of the world, as they take those deposits from those regional areas, from those communities, do they and then go back and lend that money to those communities, or is this a capital flight issue? And that could have a very significant macroeconomic impact on places all around the country that are not urban and city areas. So we'll be watching that. I would anticipate that there will be more consolidation on the backside, but for right now, it's a question of, are there names that you want to buy? I think if you can find banks that have reasonable deposit levels, that are insured, that operate in certain places that are not the more dangerous parts of commercial real estate, they are worth buying and holding on the speculation that they are acquired. And at the same time, I'm willing to take a little bit of a risk on PacWest right now. I was talking about this with CJ before the show. I bought it personally at around $9.90. It had about a 10% dividend. It's jumped up to $11.40, but now it's pulling back this morning on the FRC news. All I'm doing in this situation is buying it, holding it, and I'm setting a stop on it just in case this goes sideways.
All right, Garrett, watching Pack W. CJ, we're going to welcome you on. Good morning. Are you seeing any trades in the bank sector?
Hey, good morning, Vaz and everybody. Yeah, my trade is the same as it was yesterday and the day before. I'm short long term on the KRE. And when I talk long, I'm talking 4 months right now on the expiration. And the reason is exactly this. We saw First Republic shares go through the roof as everybody was speculating, doing the old buy the rumor dance. Now they're doing sell the news. That's not my problem, though, here. My problem is somewhat exactly what Garrett's putting out. These banks are going to take a while to get back on their feet. If this had happened in the middle of a good economy, yeah, you could look at them and say they're going to be out there writing loans. They're going to get their little buzzer working bees out there, and they'll make up for this. The deposits make that harder to do because of liquidity drives loans. Right now, this going into, I mean, some people say it might be a recession, makes it even more of a headwind for them to recover. So I would be protective on the banks, the KRE, either way. This just amplifies that. I do believe that you're going to see some companies, as Garrett pointed out, that are going to be merging. Mergers and acquisitions are going to be a big thing in the regional banks as well as the oil patch here. But at this moment, I think you got to cover your butt on the regionals.
You do. I mean, just look at FRC this morning. I like how you say the buy the rumor, sell the news dance. I'm thinking, buy the rumor,
Hey.
sell that news. That's right. Buy the rumor, sell that news.